Welcome to the Switch Style Podcast, where we encourage you to think beyond what you hear. I'm your host, and I go by the name of Smooth. And audience, welcome back to the podcast. This is actually episode 68. Got a really great show coming up for you guys. So again, thanks for tuning in. I want to let you know that the Switch Style Podcast is being brought to you by jacksjournal.com, where you can find all the latest music reviews and, of course, the Switch Style Podcast. So head over to jacksjournal.com. That's JACS journal.com and check it out. And also, I do want to let you guys know you can find the show on iTunes, Google Play Music, SoundCloud, and YouTube. And also follow me, Smooth. You can find me on Twitter at Jack's Journal. That's JACS Journal. I post a lot of great things on Twitter. A lot of things that I read on Billboard, Rolling Stone, Spin, Stereo Gum, Vibe. I post a lot of great stuff about music. So if you ever want more from the podcast, I'll actually check out my Twitter feed. You can supplement that with more music information. So check that out. It's a lot of great stuff on my Twitter page. But coming up on episode 68, guys, I'll actually update the Billboard charts for you. I'll let you know what's coming out this Friday, July 21st. And last but not least, I'll give you my take on Introducing Stokley, which is by Stokley Williams. He's the front man of R&B, 90s R&B band Mint Condition. Well, not just 90s R&B, because they're actually still active. So I'll actually give you guys my take on that. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into it. On the Billboard 200, Jay-Z takes the top spot with his latest album, 444. The set earned 262,000 units, and 174,000 of those were traditional album sales. 444 gives Jay-Z his 14th number one album, and as of now, Jay-Z has the most solo albums in Billboard 200 history. The next closest solo artists are Bruce Springsteen and Barbra Streisand, who both have 11 number one albums. Overall, only the Beatles, who have 19 number one albums as a group, have more number one albums than Jay-Z's 14. Also, want to let you guys know, all 14 of Jay-Z's albums have debuted at number one, and 444's 262,000 units are the fourth largest debut of 2017 behind Kendrick Lamar's Damn, who debuted with 603,000 units, Drake's More Life, which debuted with 505,000 units, and Ed Sheeran's Divide, which debuted with 451,000 units. Got a few more tidbits on Jay-Z before we move on. So while we're talking about Jay-Z and his latest album, I do want to point out a few interesting facts from an article I read on Billboard by Dan Rice. According to Billboard and piracy analytics company Muso, 444 was illegally downloaded 971,000 times in its first 72 hours. And if you missed that, I'll say it again. In its first 3 days, 444 was illegally downloaded 971,000 times in its first 72 hours or 3 days. Also, the album was given away 1 million times for free to all Sprint customers with a valid promotion code. And if you're wondering, that's how 44 became RIAA certified platinum in less than a week. So if you missed that entire thing, just think about it. 444 actually sold 2 million copies in its first week if you add in the 971,000 times that it was illegally downloaded and the million times that it was given away for free. So congrats to Jay-Z. I mean, he had a heck of a week. You can't beat the type of week he had, so congrats to him. But elsewhere on the 200, 21 Savage lands at number 2 with his debut album, It's an Album, earning 77,000 units. 22,000 of those were traditional album sales, so congrats to 21 Savage. Lastly, sibling rock trio Haim debut at number 7 with their latest album, Something to Tell You. The set earned 32,000 units, 26,000 of those were traditional album sales. So congrats to Haim, 21 Savage, and Jay-Z for making moves on the Billboard 200. So let's actually jump to the Hot 100. Surprise, surprise, I've said it for the last 10 weeks. Despacito runs to a 10th consecutive week atop the Hot 100. As of now, the Louis Fonsi, Daddy Yankee, and Justin Bieber single became only the 35th song in Hot 100 history to sit at number 1 for 10 weeks. Wow. And also new to the top 10 this week is Shawn Mendes, who earned his third top 10 in There's Nothing Holding Me Back. The song currently sits at number 8 this week. And just more news on Despacito before we move on. This news actually broke today, and audience, if you're listening right now, I'm actually recording this podcast on July 19th, 2017. But this news broke today. As of now, Despacito is the most streamed song of all time. If you add their totals across all streaming platforms, the song has collected 4.6 billion streams since January. So I'll say it again if you missed it. Despacito is now the most streamed song of all time. Adding all their totals across every streaming platform, that's including Spotify, Apple Music, Pandora, I'm sure Amazon has, I'm not sure if it's Amazon Prime, whatever streaming service Amazon has, Tidal, wherever it's available, it's collected 4.6 billion streams since January in 6 months. So congrats to them. And one last bit of news before we move on from the charts. Jay-Z debuted 2 new singles on the Hot 100 this week with The Story of OJ, which debuted at number 23, and 444. The title track of the album, it debuted at number 45. So congrats to everybody who made significant moves on the charts this week, including Jay-Z, 21 Savage, Haim, Despacito, as they've done for the last 10 weeks, and Shawn Mendes with his third top 10. So congrats to all of them. So we'll actually move on to what's new. And guys, I like to tell you every week about new music that's coming out just to keep you guys on top of things. And we have a very eclectic mix of albums that's coming out this week. This Friday, July 21st, 2017, look out for new albums from alternative pop rock star Lana Del Rey, who's back with Lust for Life. I know she's got a lot of fans out there, so I'm sure a lot of people are excited about that one. Gospel star Leandria Johnson, she's back with Bigger Than Me. Reggae superstar Damian Jr. Gong Marley is back with Stony Hill. And if you haven't heard 444, Damian Marley is actually on the track called Bam on 444, so check him out on that as well. And Nigerian pop star Wizkid, he's back with Sounds from the Other Side. And if you don't know Wizkid, he became more popular suddenly after his appearance on One Dance, on Drake's One Dance. He was the featured artist on that. But if you don't know Wizkid, he's actually been around for quite a while. So go check out Wizkid and his new body of work. And last but not least, well, not last but not least, I actually have 2 more. Jazz star Terrace Martin, he's back with Terrace Martin Presents The Polyseeds, Sounds of Crenshaw, Volume 1. And if you haven't checked out Terrace Martin, he's an incredible multi-instrumentalist. I mean, he plays saxophone, piano, among a bunch of other stuff. But he was responsible for a lot of the brilliance behind Kendrick Lamar's To Pimp a Butterfly, and he had his own album. Well, it's not his first album, but he put out an album last year titled Velvet Portraits, which was amazing. So check that one out also before you check out his new one, which is Terrace Martin Presents The Polyseeds, Sounds of Crenshaw, Volume 1. And last but not least, Jagged Edge, the Atlanta R&B group, they put out an album recently titled Layover. And those last few albums, Wizkid's album, Terrace Martin, and Jagged Edge, I actually missed those albums the past couple weeks, so go check them out. But I'll run them down again before we move on. Lana Del Rey, she's back with Lust for Life. Leandria Johnson, she's back with Bigger Than Me. Damian Marley, he's back with Stony Hill. And check out Wizkid, Sounds from the Other Side. Terrace Martin is back with Terrace Martin Presents The Polyseeds, Sounds of Crenshaw Volume 1. And Jagged Edge, they put out their latest album titled Layover. So congrats to all of them. So guys, I'll actually move on to the review of Stokley Williams' solo debut album. And before we jump into anything, I'd just like to tell everyone about, well, before I do a review on an artist, if you're not familiar with him or her, that artist, I'd just like to tell you guys a little bit about the artist before I jump into my take, just so that everything makes sense. Stokley Williams, he was born July 15th, 1967 in St. Paul, Minnesota. He actually had a birthday a few days ago. He began playing percussion instruments at age 4. Stokley formed Mint Condition with 5 high school friends in the early 1980s in Minnesota. And if you don't know Mint Condition, go check them out. I'll tell you more about them later on in the quick bio. But they're a dynamic R&B band with an excellent sense of musicianship. I mean, these guys are musicians at their highest level. And once I give you guys my take, it'll all make sense. But Stokley, he was the lead singer and drummer for the group. And Mint Condition, they were discovered by legendary production duo and fellow Minnesota natives Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis at a showcase performance in 1989. And if you don't know Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis, please get to know them. They produced the entirety of Janet Jackson's Control album. They produced a lot of the tracks on New Editions, Heartbreak, If It Isn't Love, Can You Stand the Rain. They went on to produce some Mary J. Blige, Usher. They started out with The Time and Prince. And if you don't know Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis, please go check them out. They're one of the greatest production duos of all time. And not just production duos, but producers in general. So go check them out. But back to Mint Condition. Their debut album, Meant to Be Mint, landed in 1991, and 9 additional albums followed between 1993 and 2015. Their biggest hits include Breaking My Heart, Pretty Brown Eyes, Forever in Your Eyes, You Send Me Swinging, What Kind of Man Would I Be, You Don't Have to Hurt No More, and If You Love Me. So, after all that time, Stokley, I'm sure he probably had thoughts about putting out a solo album, but it's finally arrived, and it was actually released June 23rd, 2017. So the album has almost been out a month now. So I'll go ahead and give you guys my take on Stokley's solo debut album, which is long overdue. The question that everyone wants to know is why now? Well, after nearly 3 decades into an already productive career, we're finally getting a solo album from Mint Condition frontman Stokley Williams. The Minnesota native led modern R&B's quintessential band in an era where their peers were less likely to play instruments. Instead, contemporaries like Boyz II Men, Jodeci, and Guy functioned as only vocal groups with the backing of cutting-edge production techniques. One could argue that Mint Condition's skill set was more custom fit for a generation where baby boomers like Earth, Wind & Fire, Kool and the Gang, and Parliament Funkadelic ruled the genre. Yet, Mint Condition's distinctive status as a superior musical outfit made them a rarity and departure from what had become the norm in 1990s R&B. From the beginning, Stokley always drew attention as frontman and lead vocalist of an act that generated classic singles such as Breaking My Heart, Pretty Brown Eyes, What Kind of Man Would I Be, and You Don't Have to Hurt No More. Fans and critics alike were drawn to Williams' expressive and dynamic vocal style. Like any other band or group, many assumed that the Grammy nominee would eventually depart for a solo career of his own. Unfortunately for fans, it's taken nearly 30 years, but his debut solo album, Introducing Stokley, arrived in June 2017. If you're wondering, Stokley's Mint Condition bandmates were not involved in the making of the album. But I do want to let you guys know they are mentioned in the album's thank you notes. So, just to dissolve or dispel any breakup rumors, Mint Condition, they're still intact. They have not broken up, because I heard a lot of rumors out there that Stokley left the group, but that's not true at all. They're still a group. He just stepped outside to put out a long overdue solo album. But back to my take. As a substitute, Stokley, he recruited Philadelphia-based production duo Ivan Orthodox Barius and Carvin Ransom Haggins. And if you haven't heard any of their work before, well, I'm sure you probably have. If you're familiar with Musiq Soulchild, specifically his Just Listen album, Jill Scott or Jaheim, along with Raheem Devon, and a lot of other people, you've heard their production work at some point. But Stokley recruited them to assist in the studio and help with a lot of the production. But not surprisingly, the album's best moments come when Stokley is coupled with the Philly pair. Level, the album opener and first single, is by far Introducing Stokley's finest moment. The mid-tempo groove is anchored by an irresistible guitar riff, prodding bass line, and random wailing synth fills. To top it off, Stokley adds a stellar vocal performance, reminding us that he's not to be taken lightly. It takes time for many records to grow, But there's a chance that Level will likely be overlooked in favor of lesser singles by more current artists. Organic follows and disrupts the lively tone set by Level, but it is a touching ode that encourages women to be who they naturally are in a time where society's standards for female aesthetics are uncalled for. Stokley reassures his woman that his thoughts are with her on the heartfelt Think About You. It's also worth noting that Stokley begins his use of the rarely used steel pan on Think About You. Throughout the album, the steel pan becomes a defining characteristic of the album's musical identity. Cross the Line is strikingly similar to Michael Jackson's I Can't Help It, but it's a first-rate musical expo, complete with the standout horn section and Stokley's signature vocal runs. And audience, if you've heard Michael Jackson's I Can't Help It, which was from his Off the Wall album, and you hear Cross the Line from Stokley's album, you'll actually hear what I'm talking about. Contemporary jazz's leading figure and pianist Robert Glasper lends a hand on the seductive Art in Motion. The last two paired on Why Did We Try from Robert Glasper's 2012 album, Black Radio. And if you haven't heard that album, please go check it out. It's an amazing album. Stokley then duets with British R&B star Estelle on the charming You and I. The latter half of the album takes a noticeable dip in value when Stokley takes control of the boards. The production and Stokley's vocal styling gets more adventurous, especially on Victoria, but the album loses focus and stability provided by Orthodox and Ransom. Now, take a second and imagine being on an island drinking your preferred drink while being serenaded by a band of percussionists. That's exactly what Victoria feels like. And I do want to let you guys know just an interesting tidbit. Terry Ellis from the group In Vogue, she actually voices the character named Victoria on that song. So it's an interesting song. It's a very musical song. It includes a lot of steel pans, a lot of congas, a lot of interesting productions, and, some nice trombone solos. So check that out. Stokley, he also takes his turn at what seems to be the obligatory socio-political statement on We Me, and it seems like everybody's doing these this year. I guess it's what comes with the political climate these days, and everybody's doing it, and, it just feels like he did it to do it. And I'm not saying that he did, but I guess everybody's doing it these days, so why not, I guess. But overall, Introducing Stokley proves that Williams would do just fine outside of the confines of Mick Edition. However, Stokley's writing lacks personal insight into who he truly is. Going into the album, many fans, including myself, were likely under the assumption that they will walk away with an in-depth look at the man who led R&B's last surviving band, especially now that he's out of the group dynamic. After listening, you still walk away not knowing who Stokley truly is. Sadly, it seems like less of an introduction and more of the Stokley we've always known. If you notice the way I ended the album with sadly, it seems like it's less of an introduction and more of the Stokley we've always known, I'll be honest, I can probably say that I was more so disappointed with the results of the album, and that's not saying that it's a bad album. I guess I just expected more personally, and I can't, put my expectations on Stokley, but I felt like a lot of the songs could have been given to any singer. They were really generic, and they lacked a lot of descriptive details, and not that artists have to share their own personal story. My thing is, it just makes them so interesting, and that's one reason why SZA's album is doing so well. If you haven't heard SZA's album, go check out SZA. But as a fan and as a critic, I like to hear artists get more personal. They're more intriguing that way, and it's just me. But overall, if I'm advising anyone to listen to the album, I think there's some songs on there that you definitely should check out. Like Level, of course. Level is probably among the best things that I've heard this year, so definitely go check out Level. Another one that you should check out is Think About You. That's another one. Organic is another one. Art in Motion. The first half of the album is really good, but after that, like I said, when Orthodox and Ransom, they produce less tracks on the back half of the album, and Stokley steps in more on the production and on the back half, but you can tell that the album loses some focus once Stokley gets on the boards. And Stokley, he's a great producer. He's highly talented. He's a great vocalist, great musician, But I guess I just expected more. This felt like it could have been a mint condition album. Honestly. Yeah, I'll be honest. It felt like it could have been a mint condition album. But if you're a musician, you'll love the musicianship, the instrumentation. I mean, musically, it's a great album. But I think the songwriting could have been better. And I think if you've listened to me before, you know I like short albums. So if he took off maybe 3 or 4 of these songs, it probably would have been a stronger album. But I'm proud of Stokley. He finally stepped out and, put out a solo album of his own. So congrats to him on that. But, if I'm advising the listeners out there, I would say you could probably skip this one. But do listen to Level, Think About You, Organic, Art in Motion, and maybe a couple more songs. But overall, like I said, check out those few songs. Thanks again to Stokley. Like I said, I'm proud of Stokley. He finally put out his debut solo album after nearly 30 years of being in music. So congrats to him. But audience, thanks again for listening. Again, you can check me out on iTunes, Google Play Music, SoundCloud, and YouTube. You can also find the podcast and my written takes at jacksjournal.com. That's JACSjournal.com. And thanks again for tuning in. I sincerely appreciate it. And I'll see you guys next time. Peace.